Hello, I'm Chief Javaro Sims, and welcome to the Delray Beach Police Department. On November 18, 2021, cold case detective Todd Clancy presented the 1983 Carla Lowe homicide case to the Palm Beach County Grand Jury. They determined there was sufficient evidence to issue a warrant for the arrest of the suspect. On November 29th, the Delray Beach Police Department, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office SWAT team took Mr. Ralph Williams into custody for first-degree murder with a weapon. Thanks to FDLE and JSO for assisting in making this apprehension a reality. I want to thank Detective Todd Clancy for his diligent efforts in this case. I also want to commend the efforts of Detective Mark Woods and Sergeant Robert Brand for their efforts back in 1983. This is the exact reason why the cold case position was initiated earlier this year, to help bring some level of closure to the families who have lost any hope of justice for their losses. I would like to bring up the lead detective, cold case detective Todd Clancy.
Good afternoon, everybody. On November 13, 1983, Carla Lowe was found brutally beaten and ran over in the roadway, resulting in her death. An investigation was conducted, but there was insufficient evidence to support probable cause for the case at that time. In January 2021, Chief Sims implemented a new cold case detective position, a first in its kind at the Delray Beach Police Department. Once I was selected for the position, I began looking at many of the old cases and talked with many of the retired detectives who investigated these cases. I started working on this case and began investigative interviews with many witnesses. With the recent advancement of technology, we were able to obtain fingerprints from a piece of evidence that was left at the scene. This evidence was presented to a grand jury, which led to the arrest of Ralph Williams 38 years after the crime. I would like to thank the following people for their assistance in this case. Detective Paige McCann from the Palm Beach County State Attorney's Office. From the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. Assistant State Attorney Aletha McRoberts and Reed Scott. Detective Michael Clark and the JSO SWAT team in Jacksonville. My partners through this case, FDLE Agent Tom Bacon, CSI Dave Ackerman, and Sergeant Scabaris. I would also like to thank the detectives who worked this case in 1983, because they deserve most, if not all, the recognition. Detective Mark Woods and Sergeant Robert Brand. If it wasn't for their documentation and hard work back in 1983, we would not have all the information that we have today. Tara Sessa from PBSO Lab, who assisted in this case, I'd like to thank her. And Foster and Freeman of Sterling, Virginia. The company is based out of Sterling, Virginia. It was with their new technology that we were able to retrieve a fingerprint that we were not able to retrieve through traditional ways. And last, I would like to thank the members of the Lowe family, especially Jackie Lowe. Jackie and I remained in contact throughout this whole process. She was very supportive and understanding of the process. Thank you. Sergeant Scabaris.
Good afternoon, Sergeant Scabaris with the Delray Beach Police Department's Crimes Against Person Unit. I'm going to speak a little bit about how we executed the Chief's vision that was started earlier this year. So earlier this year, the Chief had a vision of starting up a cold case unit, or at least a cold case investigator. So never having one before, our investigative division began to research what we needed via resources, via other departments, and actually case studies. Out of a pool of candidates, we selected Detective Clancy, and then we began to work, right? So I know sometimes you think that everything is organized and clean cut. With cold cases, they aren't. We had boxes and items loosely kept in a room, stored. Some things were damaged, some things were lost. There are case files that are just on film that can't be searched via text. You have to go page by page. We then began to prioritize cases, whether they were solvable or not. We began with the most solvable cases, and we looked into the Carla Lowe case. Moving forward from there, we utilized resources with PBSO, FDLE, our crime scene unit, other detectives and other agencies, the state attorney's office, and eventually we got the ball rolling thanks to Detective Clancy. I was very glad we were able to execute the chief's vision, and I saw Carla Lowe's family here today, and it's a little emotional seeing how they embraced retired Lieutenant Woods and Detective Clancy here just before cameras turned on. So that's what we do here. That's what we're about, and I want to say thank you.
Lieutenant Woods.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Woods. I retired from the police department after 30 years in 2009, and I really can't express my gratitude to the officers and starting with Chief Sims and everybody that worked the cold case detectives down. This case was picked up a number of times while I was still working, and the advances in DNA and fingerprint technology and all that were still developing, and we kept working at it. I stayed in touch with those detectives, and I'm so glad that the Lowe family was able to get closure, and that there will be some justice for this victim that was so brutally murdered back in 1983. Thank you, Chief Sims. It's a great job trusting a detective like Todd Clancy, and I can't tell you the efforts that he went through and his skills and knowledge with the new technology and the new DNA, going through every piece of evidence to see if there was some other test that they could do, and he worked it out with the labs and all the people that were excellent. So I really appreciate his effort and the support of the state attorney's office and our partner agencies that assisted him with it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Lieutenant Woods. We'll now open it up to questions with Detective Clancy and Sergeant Scuderis. Questions?
Detective Clancy, you talked about fingerprints that they didn't have the ability to do for quite some time. Can you elaborate a little bit on what the difference is between now and then, when you had some evidence but it wasn't good enough specifically with fingerprints?
It was the advancements of technology. I can't elaborate on the advancements of technology, but we weren't able to get this fingerprint the old traditional way that crime scene would get fingerprints. There's a new process out there by the Foster and Freeman Company. They're based out of the UK, and they have a new machine out there, and it's able to get a fingerprint.
And could you tell what item you got the fingerprint from?
I know we made an arrest, but the investigation is still ongoing. We're going to continue, so we're not going to name the item, but there was evidence on scene left, and we did get a latent print and identified it as the suspects on scene.
And you said that the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office was involved. Was the suspect arrested in Jacksonville, or why was that agency involved?
Yes, ma'am. He resided in Jacksonville. So we utilized the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office to pick him up.
Okay, was he from South Florida or Delray, or?
Originally from South Florida, yes, but it was resided in Jacksonville.
Can you talk about his connection to the victim, and also just kind of talk to us a little bit about the case from 38 years ago, just for people who maybe aren't familiar with it?
There was no connection to the victim. There was zero connection to the victim. The case, I mean, from 38 years ago, like I said at the beginning, she was found in the middle of the roadway, brutally beaten and run over. At that point, the investigation started. We had to attempt to identify her at first and then go along with the case. And that's what Detective Woods did, obviously. He was the lead detective back then, so he may be able to elaborate more on it.
What's the motive, do we think, for him? I mean, if there was no connection, what's his motive?
There's no motive that we know of. There's no, I mean, some of her property was taken, but there was none.
Has this individual that's been arrested been a suspect or a person of interest for quite some time? Or did this
Yes, sir.
come relatively new?
Yes, sir. Quite some, yes, sir.
Is it believed that he's involved in any other homicide cases in this area or anything?
don't know.
This happened while she was waiting for the Amtrak train, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Was he just walking by, do we suspect? Did he,
It's still an ongoing investigation. We're still going through some things, so really we can't talk about that. But yeah, she was just waiting for the Amtrak train. No suspicious activity on her part whatsoever.
You keep mentioning this new cold case position. How many people are involved in this unit?
Well, it's myself so far right now, and yes, but luckily I have Sergeant Scabaris and Agent Tom Bacon, who is here, and CSI Ackerman. He's a crime scene investigator with us, and he's been a great deal of help. He started looking at the case right when I got the position and had stuff laid out for us to look into. And they are here also.
with this new position, you know, just for the public, kind of explain any cold cases out there in Delray Beach, they're gonna be getting another look. Can you
Yes.
explain that to the public about the importance of you guys taking the look?
So like I said, from the beginning, when I first got the position, we contacted the retired, I don't call them old, the retired detectives, homicide detectives, and asked them what cases did they work back in the day that they felt could be solved, whether it be through DNA, fingerprints, new technology, or just re-interviewing witnesses based on back in the day they may not want to have talked, but today they will because they're no longer friends or they no longer live in the area. At that time, Carla Lowe was the main one that they want us to look at. So we looked at that one first, and once this case is done and we're finished doing what we have to do with this case, we will then go over the other cold cases that we have and prioritize them based on solvability factor or people providing information for us.
So this is the first cold case that's been solved so far with this unit?
This was the first cold case we looked at, yes.
Congrats.
Thank you.
And you said you guys started in January?
Yes, the end of January, we opened this case in beginning of February, the end of January. This is when I got the position.
Can you talk about the closure this brings for the family?
I can't say it gives them closure, but obviously the thought that they know that he's now hopefully going to pay the price for the rest of his life, obviously. I don't know if they get closure, but it may help them out a little bit.
Can you say how many other cases there are that you are looking at with that factor of potential solvability?
I don't have the exact amount of open cases that we have. That's something we're going to go back to and look. And like I said, we're going to prioritize them, go through them. Probably take us a little bit of time.
Does the family want to say some words?
I don't believe so right now. I don't. And if you could respect their wishes and please leave them be when it's over. I appreciate it.
Where was Clara from? Was she from?
Carla?
Carla.
Carla.
Yeah,
She was from Broward County.
Oh, Broward.
Yes.
Do we know why she was in Delray?
She was waiting for the Amtrak, the train.
21 years old, is that right?
21. Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming out. Thank you again.